Okay.
Audio hijack. Ta 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 ta. Okay, we should be live.
Are we now?
We
Cool.
should be. Clap once if you can hear us.
Everybody, clap your hands.
Clap, 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 clap. Sorry guys, my laptop crashed, and that's what I use to do things. So
Yeah, it's a little awkward.
hey, what's up? Well, oh, it's not recording that thing. Okay, so
Marshall and I both did the claps. That's amazing.
I like that too.
Oh, okay. We got people. Hey Wallace. Hi Melon. Hi Mr. Pig. 914. Yo. Howdy everybody. Welcome
What is
to
up,
our
folks?
weekly podcast.
Yeah, okay.
Hey,
Super
Super Kitty.
Hello.
What's up?
What's up, Super Kitty? All right, so we're just gonna go and hope that nothing terrible happens while the recording process is going on. But hey guys, welcome to another episode of Random Respawn, where we talk about gaming news, gaming things, and gaming stuff. And tonight we are going to be talking about iterations and sequels to video games, and how sometimes knockoffs suck balls, even though they may not suck balls. But before we get right into it, I want to give a shout out to Wallace, who did our logo for this episode. If you check it out, that is.
Oh, I just noticed that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. Pretty darn
Isn't that the greatest
awesome.
thing you've ever seen?
Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal, and you too can get our logo art on our page for 10 payments of
right now.
fandom. Okay, so yeah, so
I really need to know what the contents of that donut were. Like, was it a Boston cream? Was it a
that's a good
blueberry
question.
jelly?
well,
Strawberry
it's
jelly?
I don't think it would be Boston cream because he is in Germany. But that's
Whoa.
also another thing. We just had daylight
Bavarian
savings time.
cream.
So
Bavarian
if this seems weird to our international listeners, viewers, it's because we jumped an hour. We did something with an hour, which means we get an hour left sleep. So
yeah, we're weird like that. We're
right.
special. Because
And-
America.
and I've been up for a while, so if I'm just incoherently rambling on, just let me know.
I was about to say,
more than
you
usual.
just came back from New York, right? And you're just like, oh, I gotta go back to work. Oh God.
Yeah, I drove in from New York this morning, so I had to wake up at 5 to drive in, and so that was like 4 mental time because of the daylight savings. So that's why I may or may not be more loopy than usual. And by loopy, I mean just annoyed at what Marshall says. And so
that's yeah, you're not wrong. By the way, Wallace says the donut is green apple, and then a Boston cream is block on top. Oh, is black on top? Is that a spelling error? I don't know.
Apple.
Yeah, but
I've never had a green apple donut. I wonder if that's any good.
I mean, it's I'm sure it's delicious.
Oh, I think he was saying that's the icing on the top.
Oh,
The black.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
All right, so let's get right into this. I'm Vajasha Raptor. Over there is Calebite, and over here is Grand Marshal. I guess there and here is completely subjective. So take that with
including
with what you will.
daylight savings, apparently.
Oh,
Right.
I have all those boxes on my bed. I'm sorry.
It's
Great.
fine.
Is that an Amazon box? What'd you get from Amazon?
I did. I got the world's largest PC cooler or CPU cooler.
Did you get any thermal paste?
No.
All right.
Yeah, I was about to say, hold on. Caleb, how has your PC issues been?
No one cares about his PC issues.
My PC is running.
I do know.
It's fine.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I need to know.
Granted,
Mike Kenny, you played last night, so it's fine.
Okay, so you played last night and you asked?
Yeah, I thought about it. I'm like, wait, if he had problems, he wouldn't be able to play last. Never mind.
Oh my god. Okay.
Whatever. I didn't think about it. Let's go.
Okay, so tonight's topic: iterations and sequels. Marshall, go ahead and take it off.
All right. So this topic came to me basically last
came
night.
To me. I love this topic came to me while I was sitting around the campfire with my peace pipe, and then it just came to me.
I had an epiphany.
I was meditating while drinking my herbal tea, and it came to me.
I had too many healing droughts last night while playing Vermintide 2, and then it just came to me, and I was like, oh, or maybe I just blew myself up too many times playing as the pyromancer. But while we were playing that game last night, I was kind of thinking like, I've been noticing a lot of people have been comparing Vermintide 2 to just basically like, oh, it's just like a mod for Left 4 Dead. And I'm just like, it's not even close. It basically it expands so much more on what Left 4 Dead was as a foundation. And it just kind of felt weird to me. And then I kept thinking about it like, but why are people ragging on it when like Left 4 Dead 2, when it came out basically less than 2 years after the first one. It only and basically just added like 2 special characters and changed like the location. Like it didn't really do a whole lot. And then which got me thinking, all right, what other sequels have kind of changed over the years or have not changed? And what other types of style of game have come out that have been ragged on saying, oh, it's just a copy of this game. But it's like, what if it's better than that? Like, what do you guys think?
I've got something that instantly comes to mind, but there's so many ways that you can go about this. So
yeah,
I mean, you've got it's hard to just say talking about sequels, because if you're talking about sequels and you bring like Half-Life 1 to Half-Life 2, the difference is huge. I mean, absolutely huge. I mean, both times Valve released Half-Life, it literally changed games. I mean, the physics with the gravity gun absolutely changed it. Story mode with first-person shooter, it changed when they released these Half-Life games.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I mean, that's at like one huge end of the spectrum where the game, it was completely different. But then you've got a game like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, where they use the exact same game engine, basically the same assets, but one has a crazy different story. And a lot of people feel like Majora's Mask story is a little bit better than Ocarina of Time, just the way that they implemented the masks and did everything with the moon. And I have to relive those 3 days over and over again. So I guess, I mean,
and there's also like very iterative sequels that don't change hardly anything, like the Assassin's Creed or even Call of Duty's maybe a little bit more so. But
the difference between Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, which later became Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, there was no difference. It was the same thing. It was.
But if you try and compare that to like say Black Ops 3, then we may see some sort of change.
Yeah, I would say that was.
But again, that's over how many games now? Like if you go from like a base to base, from a sequel to a sequel to a sequel to a sequel, from like again like 2 years apart, and at that point with Call of Duty, like you had 3 different developers working on Call of Duty, just so that way they can just churn them out every like 2 years or something like that.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, we got some cool stuff out of it, like Nazi Zombies, which became basically its own major mode that pretty much people will buy Call of Duty just to play that mode. I don't really know why, but I mean, if they really enjoy it, good for them. But then you also have other things where like, I guess also thinking about it, you have certain series over time kind of degrade in quality, like for instance, Mass Effect, where you had the original one, which behaved more like a traditional role-playing game with, which had some third-person shooting and all that stuff, but it was very ability-based, to which then that switched to more of a third-person cover shooter with a little bit light on abilities. And then you had Mass Effect 3, which was kind of more of an iteration of 2, which kind of fell apart with the story, which was, again, one of the main reasons why people wanted to go to that game.
Right, but most people would say Mass Effect 2 was the highlight of the series because
of course.
So it's like you only talked about 1 and 3, whereas 1 to 2 was phenomenal, but then they kind of got bought out at that time, or they did. But I only remember how terrible Mass Effect 3 was panned upon initial release because the ending was hot garbage. Bad. But after the patch, I don't know if the ending ever got better or not, and if just that sour feeling just stayed forever, and that's what everyone remembers Mass Effect 3 for.
I think from a gameplay standpoint, Mass Effect 3 was actually pretty good.
Is Mass Effect like the BioShock 2, where the story sucks? But I would say the thing about BioShock did have a fantastic story, but Mass Effect really, at its core, is a story-driven game, more so. So having the best mechanics is really, really great, but I don't think that it would be as frowned upon for a BioShock game to not have quite as good of a story as long as they kind of got the atmosphere, whereas like Mass Effect like needed a solid story, and I think that's where
true.
it fell flat.
I mean, and that is kind of like the difference between Dead Space and then Dead Space 2 or Dead Space 3. The gameplay is important because it's an action third-person shooter, but it's also there's a lot more on the atmosphere and the storytelling behind that, even though Dead Space certainly is even less completely dependent on the story than BioShock or Mass Effect, because it's much more action than a huge storytelling game. But still, what made Dead Space 1 good was that merger of good but slightly awkward, or at least slightly difficult controls, and a really great atmosphere for that kind of suspenseful feeling. And then as they improved on the gameplay mechanics and made it smoother and more fluid, it just became easier to combat things, and the atmosphere was lost. Those games changed pretty drastically from sequel to sequel. So that was actually going to be one of my examples.
Also, one of the big degradations over time with Dead Space in particular was, remember, with the third one, they changed it to universal ammo types, and then also like mixing and matching with weapon parts. To which then that was when they tried to implement
microtransactions.
Blah. Yes. Which kind of was the reason why there was the universal ammo to begin with, because they wanted to try and push that. It's like, but we can make more money. But
and it just made the game way too easy, though, which killed any semblance of like fear, or suspense.
There's also the Dragon Age series, where the first one behaved a lot more like a Baldur's Gate style top-down RPG, to which then the sequel degraded in graphics quality, and I have no idea.
Dragon Age Origins, the first one?
Yes, Dragon Age Origins.
That was like a third-person hack and slash to an extent.
No. There was an option to do it, but most of the people played it on the top-down. I think the top-down camera was the default.
I played Origins, and I.
Holy shit!
Oh my god!
Melon.
Whoa! Holy crap! That's amazing! Oh my god! Wow!
Melon.
Thanks.
You were way too kind.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
Great. Geez.
Damn.
Well, how about that? Thank you.
Everyone calm down.
Oh, geez, sorry.
It's okay.
Everyone calm down.
Granted, Melon was the first person to give us a tip, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing.
It's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Are you sure about Dragon? Because I swear to God, I played it, and I just remember it being covered in blood with every conversation that I had.
Are you sure you're not talking about the second one?
It was Origins. And I don't know. It was called Dragon Age Origins, but I don't know the order it came in, because if it was the first game, I don't know why they would call it Origins, but they did.
Yeah, I don't understand that. But I know it played better with the top-down camera.
Yeah,
to which
I'm looking at images from it, and you're
Pretty sure
right. And I don't remember anything about
Yeah.
this game. Apparently, it's just
I was about to say.
I didn't play it, so
I'm pretty sure they only really switched it to the third-person camera starting with the second game, to which they had the top-down camera, but it was nowhere near as good, and it became a lot more like a third-person RPG that you switch between your characters and all that stuff, to which then it kind of kept that reiteration with Dragon Age Inquisition, to which then they added more microtransactions into that game too, to which that turned even more into just an MMO in that style of you have the camera behind you and you hit the button and you do the ability, and it was less about like the top-down micromanaging. And I don't even think you had the top-down camera available at all in Inquisition. I'd have to double-check on that one, though.
That sounds right. Origins was the first one. It was Origins, and then Origins Awakening, and then 2, and then Inquisition.
Yes, yeah. I 100% played Origins. I did not beat it. But I did enjoy it at the time. It was enjoyable from what I can. Well, I can't remember it, so who knows? There you go.
Who knows?
That's it. So that was actually. So we've been talking about sequels and kind of how they've been getting worse or better in games, and I think we'll probably come back to it. But what you brought up is that. Oh my God!
Melon,
well, easy there.
Stop it, Melon. Stop it.
Oh man, that is. You can't toy with our emotions like that.
Are you like a Saudi Arabian oil baron?
Are you an oil tycoon?
Are you one of those guys who just drops like thousands of dollars on streamers? I've seen those. I've seen those dudes. They are crazy motherfuckers.
Okay. So back to so what really brought up this topic was that Marsh, you kind of said it, but let's get more into details about it because Caleb had some pretty good examples about genre defining games. But you were mad that everyone's hating on Vermintide 2, comparing it to Left 4 Dead and saying that Left 4 Dead was better.
Or that Vermintide is just a clone of
Is a clone, right?
Yeah, it's like a clone. But I mean, that's for people who really haven't paid attention at all to the game, who are like, oh, what is this? I mean, Vermintide 1, I would say, has more of, I think of that, like, kind of cloniness to it, because Mr. Beast, nice. But but it still had like the very much melee in the loot system. But with this one, with Vermintide 2, like they've expanded on it so much. It's like I feel like it's more of Left 4 Dead with a lot more RPG elements to it. I think instead of just you can have different weapons that you can get over time. You have classes now that have actual talents and abilities and stuff that you can use, which I think is super cool. And I think it's very much a big evolution to Left 4 Dead. But again, I guess you can say Left 4 Dead started that genre. Like before Left 4 Dead, there really wasn't anything like it, which that's fine, yeah. I think.
Left 4 Dead, basically a direct. So basically it's not every level, despite the level being the same, the enemies you encounter are kind of random, and the hordes of enemies that you encounter.
You have an AI director who is dropping enemies and stuff throughout a specific map that you have to go through and survive. It is a war of attrition for those type of games.
So that's kind of what we meant. And when we were saying kind of like Left 4 Dead, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar gameplay like design principle.
Was the first Vermintide the same way as Vermintide 2?
In the first Vermintide did not have subclasses. It did not have talents. It did not have special abilities.
So that was like a real Left 4 Dead clone.
The old things.
It had the 5 different classes, and it had the weapons that you can upgrade and all that stuff. But that was it. That was the only thing.
But they iterated on it quite a lot through the game's life, adding in the crafting system and all kinds of other things like as the game was going on. But yeah, when it first released, it pretty much was melee Left 4 Dead. I mean, in a lot of ways.
I'm a Saudi Arabic prince here to ask for email. Do we have to write you a check for like $1 million?
Bella, I'm gonna have to claim you on my taxes. Stop it.
I say,
Stop it.
It's tax season soon. Don't do it. Howdy, Christian.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Oh my god.
Oh, what's up, Christian?
It only took us 5 years to make $6.
Melon, I think
don't
do
that
in one sitting.
That sounds compressing.
No, it's absolutely no. But
that's amazing.
That's phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, we really So back to what you're saying.
Yeah, so Vermintide 1, pretty much when it released, it really was a melee Left 4 Dead set in the Warhammer universe, and so it was like the gameplay wise, yes, they were very close, but I think that there's a lot of hate that goes around for games that try to do a similar or slightly different thing in a newly discovered genre, and it very often they get the whatever the first game was, if it was successful, it's a Left 4 Dead clone, it's a God of War clone, it's a whatever, Devil May Cry's gone through that. It was a God of War clone. It kind of was. It was totally God of War, and what was the other main game?
Metrovania.
It was Metroidvania. No, with the game that Devil May Cry was like a merger of those two. I can't.
Resident Evil.
Off the top of me.
DMC. No. So wait, you're talking about DMC Devil May Cry?
Not the newest one. Just the game in general when it came out. The game in
general. Yeah.
When it first came out. But whatever.
Devil May Cry just reminded me of this. I was listening to our podcast. It sounds narcissistic to say this, but I was listening to previous episodes just to check audio quality and things like that. And I was listening to 2 weeks ago when I couldn't be here, and you guys were talking about gaming news, gaming things, and gaming stuff, as you do. we were talking about games that were received well critically, but like panned by critics, and then man, you gotta
my camel is my man.
That's been.
Do you hold it by the neck?
Does it
and swing it that way?
Spitting is its ultimate from like Overwatch. You cue
it turns into a machine gun and it spits.
That's right. But
appreciate it, Melon.
I can't watch or listen to podcasts where I'm not available because I get so mad at Marshall's reasoning for things, and I can't. and my reaction isn't recorded. And I just can't do it. And so Devil May Cry, that came up.
But the thing is,
I love DMC. It was way better than Devil May Cry 4.
You hate it, but your brother totally agrees with me every time.
Not every time.
Most of the time when he listens.
Devil May Cry DMC was significantly better than Devil May Cry 4.
Because at least it was a full game and not half.
It was a full game.
Twice.
Yeah.
But again, they had to do a re-release and completely change fundamental designs of that game.
They did later, and then it was still critically praised. And
it
then
was
all the
better.
Fans,
it was better because they got rid of the stupid crap that was in the first game that drove me up the wall, which I still don't understand to that day why they did that.
But anyways,
I didn't mind it. We talked about that in the episode.
I
know.
Back to Devil May Cry. You can't. Don't bring up Devil May Cry ever again.
It's like us trying to. It's like we always bring up Devil May Cry, Destiny. What are the games that we always keep bringing?
Well, there's Destiny 2 definitely lost everything in its sequel / iteration.
That was very much, I think, a step back compared to Destiny 1 by the end of its life cycle to Destiny 2. You would think after learning everything that they did, it's like, okay, let's take the fundamentals of what Destiny 1 was working with and the stuff that it did over time, and let's add on to it. And they didn't.
I mean, if it worked like that, though, like they were working on Destiny 2 before Destiny 1 reached the end of its life. It was an entirely different team that was maintaining Destiny 1.
Yeah.
Adding in all of the updates and making all of the quality of life changes that people were talking about. Like it was an entirely different team that was involved with that than the team that had broken away after the Taken King had launched. After that team launched, it was it was a whole different team, and the core team was working on
God damn it, Melon.
Destiny 2, and so they didn't have all the learning at that point. And Melon, I can't keep thinking straight.
Yeah,
keep making these donations.
No, exactly. It's
distracting. And I'm losing my train of thought and rambling.
Those are the worst kind of donations where it's you have a really good train of thought and you're like, fuck, I can't think anymore.
I had it. I had a point.
It was right there. It was right there.
But thank you so much. Yeah. You were far, far too kind.
What were we talking about again? I don't know. I'm just thinking of Overwatch now because of that. Fuck.
I know. I need healing.
I need healing.
We were talking about Destiny, totally new team.
But even though Destiny 2 has gotten a lot of hate from players since it released, I do think that Destiny 2 is a sequel that substantially changed things. Because if you look at base vanilla Destiny 1 versus base vanilla Destiny 2, they are wildly different games.
Yes.
Way, way better. And I still think that Destiny 2 has potential to turn the corner and come around because of the base that they have that game. And we got started talking about this kind of offline before the podcast. Like the difference between Left 4 Dead 1 base and Left 4 Dead 2 base is pretty minimal. I mean,
yeah, there's not.
But granted, there wasn't a whole lot of time in between those two games. There was 2 years? You said?
Did they both
less? Literally like a year and change. Both on Source Engine, and I think that was why people were kind of like, why? Because it was just such a short amount of time since that first one. Damn it, Melon. Thank you. And that between that first one.
What was she gonna do?
Oh God, I've now.
Well, so to me, I think timing has a big issue to play with it because Destiny had way more than 2 years to do it. I mean,
for sure.
Way more. And so I don't remember anyone disliking Left 4 Dead 2 when it came out.
No, I don't think so.
I
think it was
fine.
fine.
It did well. I think it was just like, why split the player base?
Right.
Rather than adding more content into Left 4 Dead 1, so you have the same people that own Left 4 Dead 1 that can just play the new stuff too, and you can bring in new people versus splitting that player base and making the people who are already fans buying another game just so that they can stay with the new audience that's coming in. So like in that regard, I think it made people unhappy. But it was a good game because it was still Left 4 Dead. They added a few new special monsters, they added a bunch of new maps, some new weapons. Like it was good. It just wasn't very it wasn't a very like big change from game to game. Like for a sequel, it was very much like a reskin of the first game.
Well, I guess iterations are one thing when you basically make a horizontal change. I mean, it sucks and no one really wants the same game. But for something like Destiny 2, you're right. They were different teams completely. I mean, things were, I mean, midlife of Destiny 1, Destiny 2 had to start being built. You know, it was exclusive to next-gen consoles and everything like that. But it wasn't a horizontal iteration or sequel. It was an actual, like, down. It was a downscale. And that's what a lot of people worried about The Division 2, is they're afraid that they're just going to stop working on the first Division. But you can't preempt any of these things. You have to wait for it to come out. I mean, I was really excited for Destiny 2. I was excited to get kind of back into Destiny and play with you guys. And the single player demo that they released was really fun, and sadly that was
yes, you do see my dog.
Marshall's killed his dog multiple times. That will go to those will go for treats for your dog, Marshall.
I think that's gonna buy treats. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, all the treats.
But I want to kind of get back to clones of games and why some of them succeed and why some of them don't, because I mean, it's like, how do you take the first how do you take like the first fighting game ever and then say, oh well,
expand on it?
Yeah, everything is a clone of, Virtual Fighter, like, oh, Mortal Kombat 4 is a clone of Virtual Fighter, and like it just where's that line, and how do you change it enough, or how do you get it to the point where people perceive it as differently enough that they don't compare it to an original game? I mean,
right, and even like the whole genre that is Metroidvania. I mean, the first Castlevania that made that genre, Metroidvania, was just a clone of Super Metroid.
Yeah, it was
true, but it was the Castlevania franchise. It was the Castlevania franchise that made its next game that was completely different from other Castlevanias, but it was just Super Metroid with a Castlevania skin. Like that.
That's where you get Metroid and Vania.
But then that became, somehow that was a well-defined and like big enough series that it had enough of a following that it's like, oh, it's not a Metroid clone, it's Metroidvania. Like it's its own, it created its own thing rather than just being called a Metroid clone. And I don't know, maybe it was enough, like because it had come from a previously established series, and it wasn't something that's like, oh, we're gonna make a new game, and it's like you're not making a new game, you're just making a game that's just like this other game. It's not an existing franchise kind of thing. Like any game that comes out now that is a hero-based multiplayer first-person shooter is an Overwatch clone.
Oh, wait, really? I do have. Oh,
well, like at the same time, Overwatch, a lot of people compare it to, it's just first-person Dota. At the same time, I mean, it's got a lot of mobile qualities to it.
I got enjoyed,
but is still stretching it.
But I mean, you've got games like Grand Theft Auto, huge open world game. But when someone describes any other open world game, what's the standard? I mean, some people may say it like The Witcher 3, Skyrim, Breath of the Wild. And some people compared Breath of the Wild to Skyrim, but then that kind of fell off. No one compares it anymore, I feel like. And they don't compare it to other Zelda games. They're just not like, oh, it's a bigger Ocarina of Time. I feel like
you would have a better argument comparing Kingdom Come Deliverance to Skyrim.
Right, exactly. Well, so that kind of almost proves my point. It's like, why does Breath of the Wild, which is an open world RPG type of game, not get compared to anything, whereas Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is an open world RPG kind of game, get basically smashed because it's a Skyrim clone?
Aesthetics are similar, I guess, because like Skyrim is, I mean,
I really don't know. I haven't played
Skyrim's fantasy, whereas Kingdom Come is I think more
historical medieval.
Yeah, but it's still like medieval. There are comparisons.
Gameplay,
like the type of weaponry, like that,
in
and a
terms of talking to people as well. Yeah, there's a lot that you can kind of compare the two to.
Whereas Zelda's gameplay is completely different from the other sandbox.
Yes. Fortnite is my religion. No Overwatch clones here. Nice, Melon. Thank you for that.
I'm actually. This is totally off topic, but I've installed Fortnite and I haven't played it yet, but I will be streaming Fortnite, I think, come April for an entire week straight and see how I go from never actually launching the game to having played for a week straight. And so I'll be streaming that.
If you want to
I can play with you.
I
have it installed,
but we can play together.
Oh no, that's a great idea. We will. I was talking about like during Marshall. I can play with you during the day come April since. I guess we can say in April, early April, I'm actually going to try and do Random Respawn full time. So hopefully we'll be releasing a lot of new content, and you heard it here first on this podcast. So you guys are in the know.
Hey,
and if we just keep getting Melon to shill it out,
right. Melon, big whale here, God.
Right? God, man, stop it! You need to eat.
Are you telling us to dance for you? Is that what's happening right now?
Dance,
like
dance,
monkey, dance.
So, so we've got.
But yeah, that's a good point. Like, what is the? I think it comes down to like they're similar enough in like a high level view. If you just glanced at a screenshot of someone wielding a sword killing a thing in Skyrim, and you glance at somebody doing the same thing in Kingdom Come, they look relatively similar. Whereas if you then put Breath of the Wild next to that, it's like, whoa, completely different art style,
completely different
setting. Like everything is way different. So it's like there's nothing even close that links them together. Mm-hmm. And with like Vermintide and Left 4 Dead, while the Vermintide is like 90% melee versus guns in Left 4 Dead, but it's got the same like a whole big horde of little shit dudes that are coming after you,
and special dudes and like mini bosses
that do very similar kinds of things to pull party members away. Like there are core mechanics to it, along with a similar vibe from the aesthetics that make it just feel like, oh yeah, you took that core design and that core idea and put it in a slightly different coat of paint.
Yeah,
I think that's where it. But I don't really know. I'm trying to think of another example like that where you have a game that might like could be considered that, but it isn't. Like could be considered a clone, but it isn't.
Right.
Try to think on that.
The Surge.
No, that was definitely called a Souls clone because that came from the same developers of
Lords of the Fallen,
which was called Clunky Souls.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Souls is another game. I mean.
Dark Souls like started that genre, or Demon Souls rather.
Are we the Dark Souls of podcasts? No, we're not.
I
wanted to make that joke.
I don't know. I don't even understand what that means.
Because everyone always tries to compare something. This is like the RPG of Dark Souls.
I guess, do you think that comparison comes up because it's publishers trying to sell their game, and they're like, oh, you like Dark Souls, you'll like this game. So do you think that it's genre defining because it's more of a marketing term that publishers actually try and give their games to attract people? Because even when we were talking about Vermintide 2, you were like, hey, Corey, if you liked Left 4 Dead, you're going to love this game.
I was about to say, is that a chicken or an egg argument? Because is it the marketers doing that, or is it us doing that and the marketers going, hey, a lot of people are doing that. Let's try and reiterate on that.
I don't think it's something that the marketers do because they're trying to get attention to their game. I do think it's something that gamers do because of the way that video games are. And you do it with movies too. Like, oh, if you like this kind of movie, like you probably like this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like if you can find something that's similar or that's going to play off of a similar concept or a similar game mechanic, it's like, hey, yeah, you liked this game because it had these kinds of mechanics. Well, this game is different, but it has similar kind of mechanics, so you're probably going to like it too. And that's definitely something that we do. And when games are close enough in execution, then it I guess is when they become the clone rather than just being a hey, you like this, you'll probably like this game. Like with Zelda, I don't know, because it's a big open world game, so it's like, yeah, you like sandboxes, okay, you might like Zelda. You like Zelda games in general, you'll probably like Breath of the Wild,
right?
But there hasn't been a game that I feel like I could compare closely enough to how Zelda Breath of the Wild implements all of its mechanics and everything to say, oh yeah, it's like this game. I would have to refer to that in speaking to genres rather than a direct game comparison. But and the same with like Dead Space. There isn't really Well, I guess Resident Evil, you could say.
Right. I mean, you've
But
got, I guess Resident Evil 4 would be the closest, which came out
yeah,
many years before Dead Space.
right.
But it's like, I don't know. It's kind of weird because I agree with you guys that Vermintide 2 isn't a Left 4 Dead clone, but Left 4 Dead's the first game I think of
Right.
when I
Of
hear
course.
Vermintide, and I don't know why, and I don't think it's good for it. I really don't. I think that
Yeah.
because if I come in thinking it's going to be a Left 4 Dead, I think that Left 4 Dead is a simpler, easier game to just pick up, play with your friends, and it's a lot more hectic, which kind of makes it a little bit more fun. Whereas with Vermintide, I think you need to be a little bit smarter about some things,
Oh
and
yes.
it's not as easy to pick up and get right into it. And I don't think that people going into Vermintide thinking that it's going to be a Left 4 Dead clone, I think it may actually hurt the game, because if you come into it thinking, oh, I'm just going to shotgun a bunch of rats, that's not what you're getting into.
Right.
So it's I feel like that can hurt the game quite a bit, specifically because it's not exactly like that. I don't know.
No, that's a good point, because
Yeah.
when if you did play, like if you say, oh yeah, it's like Left 4 Dead, but and it's a different game, then they come into it with the same kind of mindset that you had when you played Left 4 Dead, but it is a completely different game, and you won't necessarily be successful in Vermintide using strategies that worked in Left 4 Dead. So that's fair. I don't think it's healthy for the game. But when there's only, I guess the clone is used a lot when there's really only one other game that fills that genre, and then as more games come out that do similar things, it becomes less of a Dark Souls clone, Left 4 Dead clone, and more of a, oh yeah, it's in this genre of game. Like it's whatever the genre that they're calling the Dark Souls games are, action RPG,
Hard as
or whatever.
balls.
Yeah, like
Souls.
action RPG focused on difficulty. Like, okay, that's the genre, and there are other games.
Hi, Wallace's wife, by the way.
Yeah.
Hello,
Hi, Wallace's wife.
I actually want to. Speaking about genres, I was just actually thinking about it as an example of like iteration that really didn't like iterate a whole lot per sequel, but the sequels were far enough apart where it was okay. Gears of War, actually, I don't recall there being any game before Gears of War except for like one game I think on PlayStation 2 that did basically the cover system that it did. And then after Gears of War, then you got Uncharted, and pretty much any third-person cover shooter game pretty much used the Gears of War style, where you had the roadie run and then you like clung to walls and stuff, and you popped out when you shot. Like, but no one calls them Gears clones.
That's a really interesting point, and I think the biggest reason that they don't call them Gears clones is because they aren't a single player game with, or not a single player, but they aren't a game. The game itself is not similar to Gears. Like they use that cover based shooting mechanic for it, but Uncharted's story is vastly different. Like there's no
no grinders in Uncharted.
There's no
chainsaw bayonet.
Right. I mean, it's not a big testosterone fest of Space Marines. Like,
where's my wife?
That's actually the funniest thing about the Gears series and Left 4 Dead is that in the Gears series, you are huge, chunky, weirdly blocked guys, and the dev team are the scrawniest white dudes you've ever seen. And then you've got Dead Space, where you're just an engineer who's just this dude with a plasma cutter.
Some schmuck.
All the devs are jacked, and because I was watching, and I don't know why. I was like, it's just.
Well, dude, look at the dev for Cuphead. He's just the most swole looking dude. He's like that. He became the alpha Chad meme on the internet now, which kind of got big because Cuphead is just this big bulky dude. Like, yeah, I just want to make a game, and I've been working real hard at it. He's like a real chill dude, but yeah, that's really funny.
So Cuphead, I guarantee Cuphead's going to be its own genre. It's like a 2D hard, like super hard platformer. I think it's just like it's a 2D. It's not even a side scroller. It's a boss rush game.
Because most of the time you're fighting
that's
bosses.
what makes it different from like just saying, "Oh, like Mega Man."
Right.
But it's a jump and shoot, man. But it's more focused on bosses than
right.
levels.
But I mean, just like
the Dark Souls of 2D side-scrolling shooters,
a super stylistic Dark Souls 2D shooter. It's I mean, we've played stylistic 2D games forever, and this one seems to like really hold us. I really feel like in the Steam Green Beret, Green Zone, Green Light, Steam Green Light. Green Power Ranger.
We got there, folks. We got there.
I think I can almost guarantee that there's going to be a bunch of Cuphead clones, and it's going to be like, oh, it's like a Cuphead, but 3D. And you're like, well, they have that.
The only clone of Cuphead I can think of that would be a thing would be Cuphead 2, honestly. Like
I really think that with its success, I think that
in terms of its style,
well, again, is that saying that?
But gameplay wise, I don't know.
Because it's aesthetics with similar mechanics, or because it's like basically the Cuphead design, just with pixel art instead of their crazy hand-drawn 1920s whatever, because that's so freaking hard to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I agree with Josh. I think that there are going to be a number of indie games that are trying to get greenlit or kickstarted or whatever that are the same design as Cuphead, where it's a difficult jump and shoot game focused on boss combat, but not in the same aesthetic, not in that same like art direction as Cuphead.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I do think it's one of those things like where I feel like people said like Cuphead was the Dark Souls of 2D games. But honestly, the first Mario and the first Sonic were hard, and they were 2D.
I just love that we've gotten to the point where if we want to say that a game is
hard,
difficult, we say Dark Souls.
The Dark Souls.
That's
like,
exactly
it's
because
that became
no one
a meme.
remembers
That's
that,
why the idea of calling it Dark Souls is a meme. Yeah. It's
like Nintendo Hard used to be a thing.
That's true. Yeah,
it still is to an extent.
1998 Hard was a thing. Remember, BioShock Infinite tried to push that as one of their difficulty modes. Was 1999 mode, which you might as well have just called it Quake mode or something like that.
Right, and that's also. I was gonna say, with cover, it's like I feel like Gears wasn't the tap A to cover behind something was Gears. I feel like something else may have.
There was literally one other game that did that. I cannot remember
games
the name
were trying to do
right,
it
but you could always
crouch.
It was a PlayStation 2 game.
You could purposefully. Are you talking about Killzone?
No,
I don't think Killzone had it.
Switch.
Killzone did a cover system,
but Killzone was supposed to be the Halo killer. Remember, that was supposed to be trying to like.
It did not do that. Yes. That's for sure.
It did not do that at all. But no, in terms of that, literally, you can get into cover, move through cover with the tap of the A button or whatever, the X button.
And you can abuse it.
And shoot over cover, blind fire over cover.
Yeah.
There was literally only one other game that was on the PlayStation 2 that did that.
Yeah.
That was
Time
it.
Splitters.
No,
but it was.
I missed Time Splitters though.
But I mean, to me, it's like even in first-person shooters, it may not have been third-person, but you could be
behind.
It
was a GoldenEye clone.
Yeah, it was.
Yes,
yeah, but you could be
it's
behind.
It's a better GoldenEye clone. Let's be honest now.
It's a better glong.
Let's move past that. Okay, I completely butchered saying GoldenEye because words.
But I mean,
I'm hungry. Guys,
there are plenty of games where you could hide behind a wall and then lean out, but they're all first-person. So I wonder if Gears didn't get. Like it's like, oh, it's another Gears clone because hiding behind cover was it wasn't as good or intuitive or as successful.
Of course.
But it's like you could round the corner and not get shot by a demon, and
that could come down to just controls. And I mean, it's why we don't call most modern first-person shooters now Halo clones, considering Halo on the console was essentially that became the standard of what a first-person shooter control-wise was supposed to be.
I would say that for a while there were things that were straight up Halo clones, but it's like does the clone? I mean, I guess Metrovania has lived forever, but I mean, other than that, I mean, we've been saying Dark Souls, but in terms of a series,
And
it's what 10 years old was when the first Demon Souls came out. So it's like I feel like it's a relatively young thing compared
Is
to
Demon Souls the Dark Souls of Demon Souls?
Oh, that's a good point. Why isn't that the thing? Why isn't it a Demon Souls hard game? That is such a good point.
Because-
Yeah,
Is
why
Monster
because
Hunter
Dark Souls
the
is more
Dark
popular.
Souls
of Monster Hunter? Because Monster Hunter existed
Okay,
way before
Monster Hunter existed way before Dark Souls. Let's be honest now, and that doesn't make any damn sense. Why people were like, "It's the Dark Souls meets Jurassic Park." No, you idiots! It's its own freaking thing.
It's
Come
such
on.
a good point because Demon
It's
Souls is
popularity
harder than
and,
Dark
like-
Souls. I mean, Dark Souls may be a better game kind of all around because they were able to just take the time and do it. But I mean, Demon
Yes.
Souls is hard. Real hard.
Demon Souls is almost like an experiment, really.
It is, yeah.
I swear to God, they're like, I don't know what the hell we're making, but we'll screw it.
We'll just make it literally impossible, and then we'll tone it down in the sequels. And so, yeah. That's why. Why is Dark Souls just less syllables? And they're like, well, we can afford to say 2 syllables. when we reference
Honestly,
things.
dude, I think it just comes down.
Popularity.
Yeah, it just comes down to
Oh,
popularity.
that's a good
It
point,
just
yeah.
basically being it's a meme. It literally Dark Souls itself saying that is a meme because when you say Dark Souls, you have a connotation of like uber hard difficulty. And remember, when Dark Souls was coming out, they pushed that for marketing. Like everyone was like, "This
Prepare
is
to
this
die.
crazy."
Right,
Yeah,
it
prepare to die.
was, yeah.
It was this big, hard, difficult thing that you had to get through, and like the game would be bullshit at times. Like, and I remember screenshots of, oh yeah, this boulder that you can dodge, but then the boulder explodes. It's like stupid crap like that. It's like, welcome to Dark Souls. Prepare to die. Like, and that's why that is a thing, and that's why there's the meme of, is this the Dark Souls of this? It's like that's why that's a thing. And
Yeah,
I
mean, it's pop
the thing
culture,
is-
and it just
yeah.
like I guess it's kind of like anything that goes viral. It's like the right place, the right time, and it was good and popular enough that
do the Harlem
it's
Shake.
easy enough for people to compare new things that come out that are either trying to be another game in that same kind of genre, or trying to be a cash grab using something that was popular, recently. It's just easy for people to relate to that, and I think it just kind of spins, depending on how successful the first game is, and if it continues to stay relevant in pop culture, then that people just continue to use that.
Mhm. Is the Harlem Shake the Dark Souls of clickbait dance
Stop it.
videos?
I did a Harlem Shake video.
Yes, you
I
did.
did do that. So I guess
No one watched it.
no one
'Cause
did.
I don't.
It's a
Um,
bummer.
So, do you think that saying that your game, we're just going to stick with Dark Souls. If you're
Yeah,
like, this game
might
is
as
a
well.
Dark Souls clone and it is really hard and you'll like it, do you think that is better for it long term or short term? So, even take Vermintide. Do you think that if they were to push, like, I mean, I'm not saying that it's true, but if they were like, we're just like Left 4 Dead, if you like Left 4 Dead, you'll like us. Do you think that is better for them short term or long term, or neither?
I would say short term, specifically.
Short term.
That's how I feel too. Yeah, I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
why, but I just feel like it's like you get
Because
it's an easy way to be like, oh, it's kind of like this. You might enjoy it, but over the long term, as it becomes more well known, it'll just become its own thing.
or
Well,
not at all.
I
I
was
don't even
gonna-
know if it'll get to
well, I
that
was gonna-
point.
Oh,
was gonna
exactly.
say is
That's
it's better in the
why
short
it
term.
doesn't hurt. That's why it hurts it in the long term.
Kayla, what were you
because
saying?
You can't get away from it.
It's better in the short term because it piques the interest of people who are interested in that other thing that you're comparing it to. Like, oh yeah, I heard of Left 4 Dead. I heard that was a good game, and like, but they may not have even played it, but they're like, oh yeah, that was supposed to be good, and then they go in and play Vermintide, and they're like, oh well, I don't like this at all. So it might get an initial boost of popularity because you're throwing something out there that is familiar to people, but they're then coming at it from, again, like we were talking about, wanting the Left 4 Dead or wanting the exact experience that they had when they played Dark Souls 1 the first time.
Then they
And
would
when
they would
if
rather
they-
play Dark Souls.
If they don't get that, then
Yeah.
they're like, oh, well, this game sucks, because they're not going into it trying to appreciate the game for what it is and what it's trying to do in its own way. So I think that's why this whole like culture of calling things clones or whatever definitely isn't something that's pushed by the publishers or the marketing teams locally, or internally rather. I think it's something that the gaming culture just kind of throws out there, and because it's easier to compare things to other things that already exist and you're familiar with, I think that's just how it continues to spiral.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm comparing the real quick the Steam chart metrics of how many people are playing Vermintide 2. Right now, it's number 5 of most
It's
played
doing
game on
way
Steam.
better than
It's
Vermintide
doing
1.
Oh yeah, like Vermintide 1 had like a peak. That's why I'm looking at it. Vermintide 1. I swear to God, I only had a peak of like wait, Vermintide.
It wasn't very much.
Right.
It's not even. Oh, it is on here. Average all-time peak for the first Vermintide was 24,500.
Like
so like this one is doing significantly better than the second than the sequel or than the prequel.
Oh my God, it's not a prequel. It was just the first game.
I'm sorry.
It was the prequel that came out before the sequel and was the first in its game.
It's episode 1.
It's episode pilot. But that was a prequel. Episode 1's a prequel. Episode 4 is not.
Oh my God! Yep.
The post prequel sequel.
I feel like we've covered this topic. I can't think of anything else to add to it. We can either. With these last 5 minutes, I will say that we don't need E3 anymore. I think E3 is garbage.
Just gonna throw that out there.
That's what I think.
It depends on what happens. I mean, last year's not great. Microsoft's conference was not great. Ubisoft's wasn't great. EA's wasn't great. Nintendo's doing their own thing. They don't care anymore. Who cares? They do the Nintendo Direct, and that's fine. Sony's was okay. It wasn't amazing compared to the year before. But yeah, like not a whole lot came out. But it all depends on what is in the development cycle going forward. I think we may see some good stuff this year, though.
But that's my thing is if we see a ton of when we did the game show awards wrap up, it was the most boring thing ever, and we only talked about the game releases, and only one was good. Yeah. But so here's like my whole thing on it. If everything at E3 is good, nothing shines. Whereas Nintendo, when they drop that teaser for the new Super Smash Brothers, I am not kidding.
That was a really good teaser.
It was an amazing tease. Nothing else was being pushed that day because Nintendo's like, oh, it's a Tuesday or it's a whatever day. We'll just release this Nintendo Direct. I am not kidding. On Reddit, on 4 different subs, talking about that teaser was on the front page of Reddit in 4 separate locations. I mean, I believe it. And that was on all. And that's insane. You will never get that if you drop all of these trailers at the same time, which is kind of what happens during E3. They all kind of get like jumbled together unless one was really good.
Well, usually 1 or 2 things will stand out as the cream of the crop at E3. Like not every single thing is going to be amazing.
And so if like that's to me it's like you waste. E3 is, we'll just say, 18 hours long, and you may get 13 minutes
45 minutes at most.
Sure, 45 minutes if combined with everything. And so that is terrible percentage of time wasted for something that Nintendo just offhandedly threw in the middle of the week, and it had more buzz about it. Granted, it's a Super Smash Brothers game. I think that Nintendo fans are quite hardcore. I like Nintendo.
Mango Nation, Fox
but I don't think that I am crazy obsessed, although I feel like you two would beg to differ. But it's one of those things like where basically by doing your own thing and just constantly releasing stuff whenever the time is right, I feel like has just worked so well for Nintendo that I can't. And then also everything that's really great seems to somehow get leaked most of the time, which is why Sony was like, just play the crap, which was smart. They had to like just get it out of the way or else it was going to get leaked.
Well, it's true. And Nintendo's in that nice spot though, where it's not directly competing against anybody else. Like nobody's trying to go out and get the Nintendo audience directly like that. You know,
no one is doing a stream like that, and they are literally the first.
Microsoft are so like in each other's meal about trying to get one from the other that it's just like exploding into this giant production of who can up the other one. But yeah, I agree. I think that if we could take some of the money and time spent on the production quality of E3 and put that into just
put that into our channel.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I agree. I don't, and I'm at the point now where like I don't love getting super hype about 15 games over a period of 2 or 3 days because it's like that's a whole lot of money if I am going to end up buying all of those, and then I know that I'm probably even only gonna like one of those at the end of it all. Like I went back a month or two ago, I was listening to our one of our ratings of E3s that we did of like, oh, games that I'm excited for, and I played one of the games that I'd mentioned of like, oh yeah, this game's gonna be awesome. Like I'm definitely gonna buy it, and like it seems awesome. And then life happens, and I'm not buying games on release that much anymore. And like, yeah, I went up and I wound up playing one of those. So what was the whole point of spending all that time watching E3 and getting following the hype train when it didn't even amount to anything for me personally?
Yeah, I get that.
So.
But with that said, after E3, we will probably have an E3 video.
Of course.
There we go. We just
of like the 20 games of
right.
of all the 20 games at E3 that we were most hyped for that we're totally going to get.
We are a video game channel, so it kind of comes with the territory. Yeah, it really does. So
yeah, I think that was a bargain. We squeezed in a whole other podcast topic.
We did. We did. We absolutely did. That was amazing. Two for the price of an hour.
Price of one. And the price that Melon has very much paid for.
Hey, thank you again, Melon.
Yeah. Appreciate that. So quick thanks to Wallace, amazing donut, awesome. Thanks. It's our logo currently right now. We super appreciate it. Melon, seriously, that's amazing, absolutely amazing. We can't. I know Mr. Pig. I don't know if you're still here in Super Kitty. Thanks for just being in the chat for a little time that you were.
And Christian.
Oh yeah, that's right, Christian. Thanks so much. Melon, hopefully we'll play some Fortnite soon. And Caleb, go ahead and do the wrap, my friend.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. We talked about games that were successful sequels, not successful sequels, the differences of having an iteration or big changes, and if that can go well sometimes, and that can go poorly sometimes. So it's interesting to think about games and what constitutes a new game in a genre being a clone of a previous game. So just something to think about next time you're looking at a game and you're like, oh, this is just like that other game. Maybe take a step back and give it a shot for what it is, and don't think about it in the light of the game that it's maybe similar to from a mechanics standpoint or aesthetics or story standpoint. Try to give the game its own shot, and if it sucks, it sucks. But at least it sucks by its own right.
That's life.
That's life.
So yeah, we're Random Respawn. I'm Calebite.
I'm Josh Raptor.
Oh, we're doing that. Oh, I'm Graham Marshall.
I don't know. We're doing.
No one knows. It's chaos. It's like the Wild West.
We never know how to end these properly, but
no. We could ramble all night.
We literally could.
Thank you everyone so much for watching, and Melon, please don't do this again next week. I know you need to eat, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we really do appreciate that. You guys are awesome. Melon, Wallace, Christian, everyone. It's awesome.
Everybody.
All right, thanks guys. Bye.
God damn it, Melon! Damn it, Melon! All right, we'll see you. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.